So we've all been there, right? We're designing this slide, the final slide of our course where the learner has passed, they are confirmed to know everything, and now our client comes to us and say, wouldn't it be great if we could add a button where you click it and then it generates a PDF certificate for the learner. But as Captivate developers, we know it's not as simple as just adding a button to Captivate, clicking on it, and having a PDF magically appear which populates all of the information of the person's name, what the current date is, etc. You just can't do it. Right? Hi, I'm Tristan Ward from InfoSemantics, and today we're excited to tell you that we are now offering a service from our website where we can build you a custom PDF certificate for your Adobe Captivate course. Now, how does it work? Well, we need you to send us some information about how you want the certificate to work, and then we will send you a JavaScript file in response, which you load into your Captivate project, and that's going to generate the certificate for you. So let me show you the process step by step, starting with step 1. The first step is to go to infosemantics.com.au/custom Captivate certificates. On that page, you can purchase your own custom Captivate certificate. Now, there's also a breakdown of the different steps in this process to design your certificate here. But if as you look through this page, you discover that there's a certain feature that you need, which we don't end up talking about here, then what we suggest is before you purchase a custom PDF certificate, please contact us. And you can do that by going to infosemantics.com.au/contact and explain what it is that you need your certificate to do. It's entirely possible we might be able to help you to do that, but if it requires a little bit of extra development time on our hands, there might be an extra cost associated with that new feature. But then it's on to designing your certificate. So after you purchase your certificate, we'll send you an email, and you need to reply to that email telling us the specific design that you want for your certificate. We need to know the following things. First of all, what is the paper size? Now, for most people, this would be a standard A4 piece of paper, but if you want to support a different paper size, then we can accommodate that. The next thing we need to know is this a landscape certificate or is this a portrait certificate? We can support either of those orientations. The next thing we need is the background image. So you see here all this gold and brown stuff. We didn't design this. We expect you to provide this because only you really know what you want your certificate to look like. So something to remember when you are designing this background image is that certain information on here is going to change. So like John Smith, that name will be different for each person. The date here will be different for each person, so you need to leave those places blank. But then other information or text on here is always going to be the same. For example, this is always going to have the word certificate. This is always going to say this certificate is presented to so-and-so. There's also even a place down here for a signature, which is probably the CEO or the head of HR, and that's probably always going to be the same, right? So you would include that as part of the image. And if you had a particular need for like swapping out a signature, then once again, please contact us before you purchase the certificate so we can confirm that we can do what it is that you need. Now, how big should this background image be? Well, if you've got a landscape A4 certificate, then the ideal size would be 2,800 pixels wide by 2,100 pixels high. And if it's portrait, you would flip that around. So 2,100 pixels wide by 2,800 pixels high. Now, if you can't get a certificate image which is exactly to those dimensions, then any high resolution image that's 3:4 ratio will work for us. Okay, so the next thing we need to know is what text fields you want to appear on the certificate. We've already pointed out two here, the name and the date. So for each of these text fields, we need to know what font should the text be. Now, if you're happy with the Courier font, Helvetica, or that's very similar to the Arial font, or Times New Roman, those are probably your best choices because that's going to keep the file size down. It will keep it quite low. But if you need a custom font, one that's not on every single computer, it's a little fancy, then we can accommodate that as well, but you need to send us that font file, and then we're going to package that all up into the file. So yes, we need to know what specific font family you want to use. The next thing is, what's the font color? Do you want it to be white? Do you want it to be gray? Do you want it to be red? You need to tell us that. And then the next thing we need to know about the text fields is, how is this information populated? For example, you might want to show the learner's score or what percentage they got on the quiz. Well, you need to tell us what information from the quiz you want to display here. Another possibility is that you want to show the date. Well, just tell us that you want to show the date, but we also need to know a little bit more, because how do you want to display the date? For example, here I've got the month of June written out here, but what if I just wanted to show 3/6/2021 or 6/3/2021? The standard for displaying a date changes quite dramatically from one country to another, so we need to know what format you expect the date to appear in. Now, besides that, probably the information that you want to display on here would come from a Captivate variable, in which case please give us the name of that Captivate variable. So for example, here we have the student's name. That would come, if your course is loaded into an LMS, that would come from a Captivate variable called CP Quiz Info Student Name. The LMS is automatically going to put the student's name into that variable, and we will display that in here. But if you are not loading your course through an LMS, then you might need to obtain the student's name through a different method. Perhaps early on in your course you have a text field where the person types in their name, and then you need to tell us what variable that text field is tied into. Just be sure not to put that text field on the same slide as you generate the certificate, because then people can just go and generate certificates for everyone on their team. It's a bit of a security problem. Now, just on the topic of the student name, if you are using CP Quiz Info Student Name, there is something you need to be aware of, and that is that not all LMSs populate that variable the same way. For example, here I have my course loaded in SCORM Cloud, and I'm about to generate my PDF certificate. But notice what format the name appears, and the name is being generated for this certificate from CP Quiz Info Student Name. See how the last name appears before the first name. Now, perhaps this is how you intend the name to appear, but perhaps you want to flip the first name and the surname. And if that's the case, please first go check how your LMS displays the CP Quiz Info Student Name variable, and if you want to display it in a different way, let us know how that should be, and then we can make that adjustment for you in the end. Okay, so with that information, we should have all that we need to know to generate your certificate. We might send you a couple of example PDFs to ensure that you like how the text is aligned and how big the text is, but eventually we will agree on the design, and then it's time for step 3. Step 3 is where we come in. This is where we build the certificate for you, and then we're going to send it to you. It's going to be a single file called certificate.js. And within this file is your background image, is the PDF generator, everything that you need is in this one single JavaScript file. But then you need to implement that JavaScript file into your course. And that is step 4. So you can see here I have my Captivate project and my certificate.js, and my goal at this point is to find a way to get the certificate.js to be included in Captivate's export files. Now, as of Adobe Captivate 2019, unfortunately, there's no way to just pull a JavaScript file into the library or anywhere else. We need to use a little bit of a hack. So here's what we do. We will go and we will add a button onto the stage, and we will put it somewhere. Now, we don't want this button to be seen in the export, so we'll just hide it like this. So the next thing we will do is we will go to the buttons on success action, and we're going to change it to be an open URL or file action. From there, we will click the folder button, and this allows us to browse to the location of our certificate.js. We'll then select it and click open. Now, if I publish my file right now by going to publish, publish to computer, then we can have a look at the output files. Okay, see how the certificate.js is now included in the Captivate export. The next thing we need to do is run the code inside of this certificate.js file to generate the certificate. So going back to Captivate, I need to first ask myself, when do I want to generate the certificate? And it's going to be when the learner clicks this download and print certificate button. So I'll select that. In the properties panel, I'm going to go to the action subsection, and then I am going to choose a different onSuccess action. In this particular case, I want to execute JavaScript. And then I will click on the script window to write in some JavaScript. And what are we going to write? It is going to be this specific single line of code. For all you JavaScript people out there, you'll know that this is using a library which is loaded into Captivate called jQuery to load and run a JavaScript file. And you can see here that is the name of our certificate.js that we want to run. And then that's it. We just click OK and we've finished our setup. Step 5 is very simple, but very important still. We need to test that we've set up everything correctly. So to do that, we will go to Preview, HTML5 in Browser, and then wait for the export to generate. Once there, we will play the movie, go to the key slide, and then click on our button. It might take a little while, but eventually you should see, boom, the certificate starts downloading, and it might be scanned by your virus checker. That's just standard practice for anything you download. Let's open the file, and there we have our certificate. This last step is completely optional, but you might find that it improves your user experience somewhat. You may have noticed in the previous step that when we clicked the button to generate the PDF, there was a few seconds delay before it appeared. And part of the reason for the delay is that when we click this download and print certificate button at the moment, the browser first of all has to spend time downloading that file before it can run the code to generate the PDF. So a way to improve the experience here would be to download the file earlier in the Captivate project. But as soon as we download the file, the code runs and generates the PDF certificate. So the first thing we need to do is stop the instant certificate generation. To do this, we will go to Project, Variables, and we will create a new variable called certpref no instant download. And we don't need to give this variable a name. What the code in the JavaScript file will do is check whether this variable exists, and if it does, it's not going to instantly generate the PDF certificate. But how does that benefit us? It means that we can do this. I will close out of the variables dialog. I'm going to go to my download and print certificate button, And I'm going to go to the success action where I'm executing JavaScript and have a look at the JavaScript there. It means that this code, which downloads the JavaScript file, does not have to be run here. We can run it at an earlier point in the course. So, for example, I'm going to cut the code out of there. And then I'm going to go to the slide properties here. Under actions, for onEnter action, I'm going to execute some JavaScript, open the script window, and then paste that code in here. This means now that as soon as we enter this slide, the JavaScript file will be loaded. But now we need to trigger the certificate generation. How can we do that? Well, let's go back to our button where we still want the PDF certificate to generate, and we'll go to the script window. And this is the JavaScript code we're going to add in here, certificate.generate, followed by 2 parentheses, and then a semicolon for good practice. Let's click OK to that, and then let's test this again. We'll go to Preview, and then HTML5 in Browser. And then we'll see when we play the movie and click Download and Print Certificate, the certificate file still ends up generating and showing. So there might not be an appreciable difference just previewing on your computer here, but on a web server you'll find that will probably load a lot quicker. So that's all you need to do to get your own custom PDF certificate for Adobe Captivate. And like I said, if you have a feature in mind that we didn't cover here, then please contact us first and we can see whether we can accommodate you for that. So if you want to keep on learning about different ways that you can push the envelope of Adobe Captivate, stay tuned to us here at InfoSemantics, and we'll see you next time.